With The Last of Us Part 2 on PC at launch, things are better than the disastrous Last of Us Part 1 remastered PC port, which is nice, but at the same time there are a number of technical continuities with that release that drag the package down. Nixies has come in here later in the development of this port to add in their own twist, but still some things appear taken wholesale from the previous porting efforts handled by Iron Galaxy. That continuity is plainly obvious in the game's graphical options menu. At first glance you might think, hey, this looks different than what I saw in the Iron Galaxy port of The Last of Us Part 1, but that is purely on the UI there. By clicking on each graphical option, you can see how it unfolds. A sub-menu, which when all clicked out, basically map over to those same settings we saw in Part 1's port. Going over the display options, we can see some continuities with Part 1 as well, but there are some newer things. DLSS frame generation is in, and dynamic resolution scaling is coming in from those Nixies libraries. The amount of options on the surface level might seem like it is good because you can tweak to your own liking, and that is true, but much like the Iron Galaxy's Uncharted 4 ports and the port of Part 1, scaling over PlayStation 5 here is very minimal. As an example of something that scales higher than PS5, you have screen space shadows, which were not present on that platform. Here you can see them adding in more shadows, purely in screen space, to the area underneath the fence here, and we can also see that the character shadow here up close for the main character is higher quality on PC due to the addition of a contact shadow setting, which here has been set to very high. So in general, I would say shadows is the area where you get the biggest quality upgrade in this game, but the rest is very similar to what you would find on the PlayStation 4 or 5. Before I mention settings you may want to target for optimized settings, I want to briefly cover some smaller issues I had while playing the game. Not mentioning them all, of course, but the ones that I found most visibly obvious. One issue that was visible on the PC was how shadows at times would load in far too close to the camera, like you can see here while running forward. This is especially odd to see in the maxed out PC code, as the PS4 Pro back compat code running on PS5 even doesn't have this issue. Beyond that, there were a few times we also saw stuff flickering, like this texture on the ground here. The last issue I saw was DLSS related. DLSS and DLAA in this title are of a lower quality than you might be used to, where even DLAA shows obvious ghosting on vegetation and particles in areas where it usually excels actually. In this case, I recommend NVIDIA users inject the transformer model in the way they find most convenient. With visual bugs out of the way, I want to touch on settings you could want to target for the game. As I mentioned earlier, lower-end GPUs are not exactly running this game up to the level that they might usually expect given the game's original target platform, with the RTX 3060 not always reaching 60 FPS at PS4-like settings, which for referential comparison, this Last of Us Part 2 at its heaviest with PS4-like settings is about as heavy on the GPU and CPU as the heaviest sections of Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition, where there it was running at ultra settings, tessellation on with RTGI and RT reflections turned on. Perhaps this can give you a sense of how heavy this game can be. As a result of that, I recommend lower-end GPUs and CPUs like the RTX 3060, RTX 4060 and equivalents, and Ryzen 5 3600 equivalents to go around to the PS4 Pro quality level settings for this game, but with texture filtering ramped up to 16x because we're on PC here, and with screen space shadows on, as that is a nice quality win for the graphical presentation. Then you can just leverage VRR or an upscaler to hit your desired level of smoothness, providing that your CPU can keep up. GPUs above that, like those of the RTX 4070 level and such, can then try and use the PS5 performance mode settings with those same additional addendums about screen space shadows and anisotropic filtering. By the way, big shout out to Mohammed again for working on these PlayStation equivalent settings in the background while I'm testing the game so that I can push out this video on time for release for you and the audience, so thank you. But other than that, there's not much really to say here regarding this port at the moment. I would say it's better at launch than the last go around with Part 1, but there's still some frustrating aspects, a kind of buggy feeling overall that is hard to shake. Beyond the GPU performance, my biggest pet peeve in the game are those frame time spikes that I mentioned even on high-end kit, which seem incongruous with the cinematic presentation that you can find in the game. But that is really all I have to say. Like, subscribe, help on Patreon, follow on social media, and as always, this is Alex, bidding you farewell und auf Wiedersehen.